Hi, welcome to day 13 of our 30 days Python series. Today we're going to learn date functions in Python. Date function is very important in Python. So we will see some problems and we will solve some problems. Also, we're going to do one mini project on the date functions, which is going to be a CSV file. So we'll load a CSV file and we will transform the data using date functions. So let's start. The first thing that we will need to do is that we'll need to import the date modules. So let's first see how we can import the date modules. To import the date modules, you just need to say from. Now date modules is inbuilt Python functions. You just need to import it. So you need to say from date time. So from date time, which is a date time import date time. Now here you can see it is imported. So this date time is imported. Now we can use this date time to see the information. So I can just go ahead and say date time dot now. This is going to give us the present time from the system. You can see it here. So this one I can store in a variable called now. So I would reuse this now variables later on. So if in case I want to see the today date, so I can just go ahead and say now dot date. Okay. So this is going to give us the date. So it's a module. I just need to say now dot date inside this parenthesis. It's going to give us the date. If you want to see the hour, because this now holds what? This now holds basically date and the time as well, including the seconds and the milliseconds. You can see it here. Okay. So if you want to see the time, you can say the time and you should be getting the time. So again, for time you need to use parenthesis. If you want to see the hour, so you can just say hour. So it doesn't need parenthesis. You can see the hour. You can see the minute as well. You can see minute. So you can see minute. If you want the seconds, you can say seconds. Okay. So this is all happening because of this date time dot now, because this now return the present time from the system. So let's go ahead and see some problems which we will solve using date functions. Now the first problem that we have, which is current date and time. So it says write a program that print the current date and time in this format, which is YY, then hour, minute, second. Now same problem we have solved yesterday as well, but I'm going to show you how you can do that. So let's go ahead and add a cell here, maybe here, and let's say that we want to show the time. Now if you know that, now if you have seen, now you have seen that now dot now returns the time, right? You can see it returns the date and time, but we need in this format, which is in this format. You can see it here. Okay, so for that we have two options. One is called strf time, okay, which is called string formatting time. We have something called strp time. So using strp we can convert string to date, and using strf we can convert the date into different format. So if for this one you can say strp time, so that one usually you need to put the syntax in this way. Okay, so let's first see this one, which is called strf, because we have the date. Now we just need to transform into different format, which is this format. Now this one is basically used for, you can say, converting string into date format. You can see this one as well. We will use this one as well. So first let's see the strf format. So for that you just need to say now strf format, because this now holds the date and time. So inside this parenthesis you need to put this syntax, which you can see dmy. Y should be capital, so that's going to say date, month, year, and then hour, minute, second. So we need year, mmdd. Okay, so for that we would need a different shape. So we would need something like this. Everything you must enter inside this single or double quotes. So we need first the year, so I would just enter this percentage. This percentage sign is mandatory, so we need year, so that's capital Y. Then we need the month, so I would just say again one more percentage, then month, then I would say one more percentage date, because I need this. Okay, if I just print it, it's going to simply print me the date. You can see, right, year, month, day. So in this format. Now that's fine. Now what I need else is that I need the time, right? So I can give one space or comma, whatever you want, and then I can define this hour, minute, second. So for that again you need to say simply that percentage sign, then h for hour, then colon, just to distinguish the colon between hour, minute, and second. Then we need again one more percentage, then we would say m, then colon, one more percentage, then s. So that's going to give us, you can see, the time, which is the date and time in this format. Okay, hour, minute, seconds. Now let's see the problem number 2. So the problem number 2 says create a function that take a date in the format of YYMMDD and return the format which is DDMMYY. So it is going to take a date from the users, which is this one, and it should return as a date, formatted date, basically in this shape, which is date, month, year. Okay, so let's go ahead and solve this one. So first of all, let's write an input call input, and we would ask please enter date, like, okay, so we would just define the format for the users. So it's going to be something like YYMMDD. Okay, so it's going to be YYYY, then we would say dash then we would say mm, then dash dd. Okay, so this is the format user is going to enter the date. Okay, so that's fine. Now once it is entered, we would store this in a variable. So I'm going to say that maybe user date or user input, whatever you want to call. Okay, now I can just execute it, and let's see. If I just execute this, it's asking for the date. Let's enter some date called 2024. Let's say 9 September, and let's say today date is maybe 24. Okay, you can see it's returning the date in this format, right? But it is a string. If you see here, it's inside this quotes, right? That means it's a string. If you want to verify it, you can just go ahead and say type outside. That's going to show the type of this, because whenever user enters some data, it is always in string. So you would say maybe something like this. Okay, you can see it is a string. Okay, now what we need is that we need to convert this string into date in this format. So for that, we are going to use the strp time functions. Okay, so for that, you just need to write something called date time, and then you need to say dot, and then you have two options, which is called strp time, because, and then we have which is called strf time. So we need to use this one, which is called strp time, because we need to convert a string. Okay, a string into different format. So for now, we would just say strp, and then inside this, you can see as soon as I use this parenthesis, it is giving whatever it is required. It required date string, so this is holding the date, right? And then the format you need to define. Okay, so for that, I would just use this date string, and then the format I want, which is going to be in this. Now we need to tell like the date string that we're giving, what is the shape of our data. So like we have yy, then dash mm, then dd, right? So this is what we need to tell. So for that, what you do is that same use this percentage sign, and you need to tell what is the shape of your data. So we have the data in first y, and then dash, because we have the separator which is in dash, right? Then I have again percentage m, then I would give one more separator, then percentage, then I would say d. Okay, so this is the shape we have the data. Okay, now that is fine. Next, now this is going to convert this user input, which is the text, into date. So I am going to store this into a date column. Once it is converted, next what I want to do is that I would want to convert it back to this shape, which is called dmy. Okay, so for that, let's first print it. Okay, let's first print it, and let's see that what we get in return. So let's execute it. It's going to ask for a date 2024 09 and 24. Okay, see, it's kind of now telling that, okay, this data that I have, it's a date, right? By default, you see it's giving a time, and it's giving the data types as well. You can see the date time, right? So by default, Python knows it's a date time data. Earlier it was a string. So now date time data, you can simply convert it back using which is called strf formatting. So you just need to say strf formatting to convert it back to the date, whatever the date you want. So you need to just say here whatever the shape you want. So we want only something like which is called ddmmyy, right? So I would just say d, then black d, then slash, then what I want is maybe m slash, what I want is d, right? So this is what I want, not d starting with the d, then last I want y, right? So this is what I want. So I would just say here call converted date variable, and I can just print this converted date variables. Okay, now as soon as I execute it, it's again going to ask any date. So maybe random date 23. Okay, now we can see it has converted the data which is in this shape, which is 2309-2024, though user has entered the data in this format. Now you have seen how to convert string into date, and how to convert that date into different format, which is you have seen here. Okay, all right, let's see the question number 3. So the question number 3 says write a program that takes user birthday date as input and calculate their age in years. Okay, so this is going to take a user's birth date basically, and it's going to calculate their age in years. Okay, so let's see how we can achieve it. So let's say we will write a function that's going to take the input from users. So we would say please enter your DOB, which is date of birth. Okay, so we would define a shape something like maybe YYMMDD in this format. Okay, once this is done, so we would first store the data called DOB variables. Now this is a string, so we first need to convert it using which is again called this format, which is called this format, right? So we would just reuse this here. Okay, and I'm just going to say DOB date. Okay, now I would just ask in this shape. so that's going to be easy for me. So I'm going to ask that YYMMDD, okay, for Y. So this is the shape I'm asking the user to enter the date of birth. Then I would just use this the strf time to convert it into the actual date, right? Once it is in the date, then what I would do is that I would first of all go ahead and take out the today dates, right? So today date is going to be this now functions. If I just run this now functions, it returns the today date, right? Because I have hold in this now functions, I am holding basically date time dot now functions, okay? So I would use these functions. Now what I need to do is that I need to calculate the years difference between this two date. So what I will do is that first of all, from here I can get the year, okay? If I just type year, so it's going to give me the year. Now if you want to see it, let's say you have a now which returns the date, you can see. If you want here, so you can just type here, you see you're getting year, okay, from now. Same ways this is going to give the date because the string has converted into the date. Now I'm using the year, so that's going to give us the year, right? So I'm going to rename it called the year, okay, birth year, okay? So that's going to be birth year. Now what I need is that from the now I already have it, which is called kind of the year. So I would just need to minus it, right? So I would just go ahead and say that age equals, now I would just need to minus the present, which is going to be this now dot year, minus which is going to be this one, that date of birth, okay? So this is fine. Once I do it, I can just print this age, and you will see it's going to kind of asking for the date of birth. So let's just give some date of birth call, maybe 2001, and let's say give, let's say 4, and let's say day is something like 27, okay? So it's giving 0 at the moment. Let's first of all find out why. So we are saying here okay, here mmdd, so we are saying here mdd, so this is the format we have, and that's perfect. Let's kind of debug it. Let's see if in case whatever we have earlier so far it's working or not, okay? So let's first print this one. So we go ahead and say print this, asking for year, that's going to be maybe 1997, and then month is going to be maybe 9, and date is going to be 1. Okay, so it's kind of telling me the year is 2024, so which is not kind of correct. Okay, so here I have missed something, so I need to use this dob here, okay, instead of using this previous variables, because this one I'm converting into date, right? And then I'm taking out the years, okay? So rest I think everything is fine here. Okay, now this both holds the year, and if I just find out the difference, it's going to give me the year difference. So let's say 1997, and let's say the month is going to be 5 and the day is going to be 27, okay? So you can see the difference, which is going to be 27 years, right? So the age is for that person is 27 years. So you can just print it, something called print, use f formatting string, so f, and we can just go ahead that your age is, inside it we can just put this age. Okay, let's execute it, and we do not want to show this here, so let's kind of go ahead and execute it, asking for the date of birth, so 1997, 07 and 25, okay? So you see that your age is 27, which is kind of correct, right? So this is how this is working. Let's go ahead and check this one, which is called leap year checker, okay? So we need to create a function that check a leap year. So for that, what I would do is that I would simply, it's very simple, because the function takes a year and then it check a leap year. So you can just go ahead and say input, and we can say please enter year. So we would first convert this into int, okay, and then we would just store into a variable called year, and then we would just go ahead and check if this is a leap year. So for that, we would just go ahead and say if, and we would just use this year divisible by 4. Any year that is divisible by 4, that's a leap year. So if yes and reminder is 0, then we would just print call f formatting, and we would just go ahead say that this year is leap year, okay? Now else we can use the else, and we can say same thing, this year is not not a leap year. Now if you want to know more about leap year, let's say 2020 is a leap year, right? So if you just divide it by 4, you would be getting like the remainder would be 0, right? So if you divide it by 2022, the remainder is not going to be 0 here, so we can just go ahead and check. So any leap year that is going to be divisible by 4 and the remainder is going to be 0. Okay, so let's go ahead and check 2020. It's a leap year, you can see. Let's check for 2022. It's not a leap year. Okay, let's check for 2000. It was a leap year. Okay, let's check for maybe 2098. It's not going to be leap year. Let's check for something like odd numbers. 2021. It's not a leap year. Okay, let's go ahead and check the next, which is called birthday countdown. Now this is very easy one. So we just need to say create a program that takes a future date as input and calculate how many days are left until that birthday. Okay, so same way we would just go ahead and use the same. That's going to take a date of birth, which is like this one. So this function is going to check the date of birth for the person. Please enter your date of birth, and that's going to be a future, the date of birth, right? Not the birth date, but here we want the date of birth. Okay, so the birth date, right? So here what we need to is that we need a future date, right? So we would set that date, right? Birthday date. So it's going to say the birthday date, or you can simply go ahead and say birthday. Okay, now we would ask year, month and day. So it's going to be future date, right? First of all, right, slide down. It's like future date, right? It's not like date of birth, right? So once it is entered, we would just convert it again back in this format, and I don't need the year this time. So that's going to give me the, instead of year, I would just go ahead and say birthday date. Okay, now that's fine. Next, what I need is that I need to count how many days left for that birthdays, right? So for that, I can use the now variables, and this now variable is going to return me the today date, right? So the today date, from the today date, I can minus that birthday date. So I would go ahead and say something like this. Okay, this birthday date minus and this birthday date. Okay, so this today date, which is called now. Okay, so that's going to give me the date and difference. Okay, the days difference. Okay, like the days countdown, you can say the days left. Okay, now one thing we just need to do, because this birthday date, okay, this birthday date is going to be a date, and this now is also going to be a date. Now, if you minus from this and this, you will be getting the days left, minute left, second left, hour left, everything. Okay, let me just show you. So I can just go ahead and print it, and let's just run it. So looks, everything seems to be fine. So let's give a date called maybe 2027 and maybe 2025 05 and maybe 27. Okay, you see that it's giving something like this, that date time delta, days left, second left, microsecond left. Okay, so what we need is that from here we need the days left, right? So for that, what I can do is that I can simply go ahead and use something called days. Okay, so that's going to, if you want to see this in days, it's returning an int, so it's going to just return this number instead of everything else. Okay, so let's say 2025 05 and 27. You see the 243 days left. Okay, so we can just print it in a nice maybe message called print f formatting days left to your birthday, and we can just put this. Okay, so ask for like 2025 birthday date, and we can just give like maybe 5/27. Okay, you can see it is showing 243 days left. Okay, that's it. Now let's see the next one, which is called day name. So this one I have again covered yesterday as well, so I would just show it again. So for the day name, you can just use this now, because this now holds kind of the date, right? So if you just print this now, it's kind of holding the date. You can see date and time, everything from the system present date. If you need the day name, so again we would just use the string formatting, which is called strf formatting, because from the date we would convert to a day name. So you just need to say inside this simply use a capital A, and before that just use this percentage sign. Okay, that's going to give you the day name in capital. If you want the shorter day name, so you can use the small a, so that's going to give you the shorter day name. If you need this day number, so just use the day, so that's going to give you the day number. Okay, so this is what we have done. Now let's see the mini project that we will build. So it says create a function that load the csv file, transform the dates into new csv file called date, day name, month name and the year. Okay, So now let's see how to get the month name. If you need the month name, you can just write B. That's going to give the month name. And if you need something called day name, I have already shown you, which is capital A. If you need the year, so you can simply go ahead and write year here. That's going to give the year. Okay, so all those things we need. Okay, now the function should load a CSV file and convert all these things into different things. So we have a data set which is called this dates. So that has something called ID and this date. Okay, so from this date we need to create new columns. One is going to hold the year, one is going to hold the day name, one is going to hold the name of the day, and one is going to hold this date. That's what we need to do. Now you can see each date is holding by ID. So we can load this CSV as a dict. So based on each ID we can access this date. Okay, and then we can transform it. So that's what we will do. So let's go ahead and kind of start a mini project. Maybe here first we will start with the loading the data. So I would say that date converter, something like it, any name. So let's go ahead and start with the with clause. So we will be using with clause to load this CSV file. So we would say with, and we need to say open, because with is going to take care of closing the file. So open, what is the file, the path. So I would just use this file name which is called dates, because it's in the same directory where I have this Jupyter notebook. So I would say dates and dot CSV. Okay, now I would just need to define the mode. So it's going to be R because I'm reading it now, and I would just save it as a file, and I would just need to kind of load the data as a reader. I can use it as a reader variable, and inside it I would just need to use CSV. Now before that I need to first import a CSV module. So I would say import CSV modules before working with the CSV. So CSV dot, you would have something called Dict readers. Let me show you, which is called Dict reader. So it's going to load the data as a Dict. You can use a normal reader as well. I would just show you. If you read a normal reader, and you can just go ahead and say print reader, which is called reader, you will see the data itself. Let's check. Yeah, the problem is that it's returning more than one date. That's the reason you are getting error. So we'll need to use a for loop here. So we would just go ahead and say for row in reader, and we would just go ahead and say print row. Okay, here I missed something called file. So let's go ahead and see it. Now you can see that it's loading one by all the list. Okay, now even if you want to just print it, so you can just go ahead and say print reader. Okay, so it should work fine, but it's giving kind of this CSV because we have more than one object. Okay, so for that you can just use the loop which I have shown you earlier, which is this one. Okay, now if we load this as a dict, so you will be getting the data as a key value pairs. So that's kind of going to be great. So I can go ahead and say that dict readers. So I just need to define the file, which is called file. Okay, now I would just go ahead and say that row in readers, and you would see something like this nice way. Okay, so I have ID and I have date. Okay, so ID is going to be 1, date is going to be this, right? So based on the date, based on this key, I can access this value as a dict, right? Because this is one dict, this is second dict, all these dict are here, right? So that's what I would do. So I would just go ahead and say that if in case I want to access this date, what I can do is that I can go ahead and say that maybe in date variables, and inside it I would just say row. So for row, what I want to access, right? So I can just give, I want to access the ID. If I want to ID, it's going to give me the ID. If I want the date, it's going to be the date. Okay, so let's show you that. I would just go ahead and say that date, and I would just show you the date. Okay, so let's go ahead and kind of say print, which is called this date. Oops. Okay, you can see it is returning all the date, right, from this, which is called the this reader, right? From the reader I'm using a for loop because I have more than one date. So that's fine. Now this date we are going to use to do a lot of transformations. We can go ahead and check the type. So you can type of date, let's see. So let's see, I would just need to use a print statement here, print. So it's kind of showing as a string. So first of all, this date that you see, it's a string, right? Although it is loading the data, but it is considering it as a string. So first we need to convert it as a date. So for that you can again use the same, which is called same formatting. So which is called date time and dot strp, because this time we want to convert a string, right? So what is the string? So a string is going to be this string, and what I want to convert it, I need to give the format. So you can see it is having a format called like year dash month and days, right? So I would just go ahead and inside the brackets I would first put this percentage y, then I have dash, then percentage m, then I would just give dash, then I'll give dash, then I have percentage day. Okay, so this is fine. Now if you check this in data types, you would see it is now as a date time. Okay, that's what I needed. Now what I can go ahead and say that I want to kind of print the day name. So for the day name, as it's a date and data type, so I can just go ahead and say date dot strf, which is called f formatting, and I would just go ahead and write something like this. Inside this brackets percentage a capital, it's going to give me the day name, so I would just hold it inside something called day name, right? So what we have learned, we are using it here. So day name, if I want to print it, I can just go ahead and say that day name, just I need to print it. So let's go ahead and say print day name. Okay, you can see all the day names are here extracted from this, right? So what we have done, first we have loaded the dataset as a Dict reader, then we have accessed this date and we have converted this date into a date because it was a text earlier string. Then we are accessing, then you are using simple strf functions to convert, to access the day name, to convert it to a day name, and we are saving it as a day name. Okay, the first task is done. Next what I need is that maybe month name, so I would say that month underscore name is a variable I'm creating, and to get the month name, again you would just need to say the same thing, but here you just use the b, because this b is going to give the month name. If you want to check, I can just show you. So it's going to give you the month name, you can see it here. Okay, now if you need the year, so that's again going to be the same, but I would just go ahead and say that what I need from this date, just the year. Okay, so let's see the year. So I would just go ahead and print it. You can see I have all the year. Okay, so date, day name, month, year, all these things, whatever I needed, I already have it. Now if you want to show everything, I can just go ahead and say kind of something like f formatting, which is called f, and inside this bracket I can just go and say year, and let's put the year inside this, which is called, first let's say the year, that's going to be year, and let's first put the date, right? So let's go ahead and say date, and we can put this inside this called date. Okay, next what I need, the maybe the day name, so I would say day name, and I would just put one more fillers, so where I would say day name, and I would need the month name, so I would just use month name, one more fillers where I would say month name. Okay, all right, so perfect. So if you want to show the results, you can see we have the results nice ways, where we have the date, then day name, the day name, month name, and the year, right? So everything looks like perfect. Now what I need is that we can just do some more formatting here. I would just convert it back to date instead of having it like this time. I don't want to see the time, so I would just put something called date. Okay, so date, and I need to use this parenthesis. You can see now I have the date nicely formatted, no time, because I don't want to see the time, and I have the everything else. Now what we will do is that we will store this data in a CSV. Okay, for that, as it is inside the for loop, inside the for loop I would store the data row by row, but I need to open a CSV file which is outside. Okay, because once I open a CSV file, I need to close it, right? So if I open it inside the for loop, so every time it's going to open and close it for each iteration, so which I don't want. Here I'm going to create a CSV file, and then I'm going to insert this data row by row. So the CSV file must be outside of this. Okay, so I would go ahead and say that something called with, because with is going to take care of opening and closing, so it's going to close once all this for loop is done. Okay, so with, now the CSV file I want to call it something called dates and convert it. Okay, dot kind of CSV, the data types, and here you need to give the types, which is I want something called W, which is called write, and new line is mandatory, so I would just keep this, which is called this blank space. Okay, I would just name it call maybe as X, and here I just need to keep a column, and I need to put the the condition. So first I would just something called a reader, or maybe writers. Here I would just go ahead and say writer. You can give any variables name to access this informations. So for that we would just go ahead and say writer equals csv dot writers. Okay, now inside it you just need to put your file name, which is called X. Okay, now let's create a headers. So for the CSV, what do you want the header to be? So here we would say adding header, something like it. So I would just go ahead and say that writer, okay, dot white rows. So this is going to add our first row as a list inside this parenthesis. So what are the things you want to capture? So you want to first the day, which is called, first what you want is the date. So I would just go ahead and say date is the what I want first column, and second column what I want is maybe the day name. So I would say day name. Okay, then third column what I want is going to be something like this is, which is called month name and the year. Okay, so month name, and fourth column what I want is the year. So all these are my first row. Okay, so that's fine. Now what I need to do is that in every iterations I would need to store this data. I need to store this data. Okay, so instead of printing, what I can do is that I can just store the data here. So I would just write a comment called storing the data. Okay, so here what I will do is that I would just go ahead and say what I need here, the date. I want to date the first row, first column, then I want the day name. So I would just use the day name, then I would need the month name. So I would just month name, and then I would use the year. Okay, now one thing we need to do is that every row must be inside this, which is called inside this CSV, because otherwise here the CSV has already closed, right? So for that we will need to put this for loop inside this which is called the CSV, because we have opened the CSV here and this for loop must be inside it. Okay, so we have opened the CSV. It is going to go through each iterations, and then it's going to kind of insert the data, and then it's going to basically save the data and close this file, and then it's going to close this file as well. Okay, the first file which is opened. Okay, so let's say instead of printing it, let's write a nice message call, maybe not here but outside this for loop. So something called, okay, data transform successfully done. Okay, all right, now let's go ahead and run it. Let's see if it's going to create a new file. So if you see, I have this dates and another file, but I don't have something called which is called the dates converted, right? So date, we can use the format anything you want to use. So let's go ahead and execute it. You can see data transform successfully done. Okay, now you see we have created a new file which is called dates converted, right? If I just open it, revealing finders, let's open it. So this is the data. You can see it has nicely converted the data. Okay, so from the year we have day name, the month name, and the year. Okay, so this is how we have converted the data. So earlier data, if you want to see, it was in this shape. So we simply had this which is called only ID and the date. So from this we have created this using these functions nicely, day name, month name, and the year. That's it for today. Thank you so much for watching the video till the end. If you have enjoyed this video, do subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you want to practice the same problems, you can find all these resources in the video descriptions. Have a good one. See you tomorrow. Take care. Bye bye.